So there are two more elements here in a really focused school-based monitoring and evaluation system that I'm talking about today. And this third one, number three, is building a collaborative structure that's focused on supporting teachers. And I think I've said already that inclusion means children are in classrooms with their peers. And inclusion means that classroom teachers are doing most of the work to make the system function. So we need to really turn our attention to supporting teachers and to monitor how effectively teachers are being supported. So there are six elements that I've identified that relate to supporting teachers and things that should be monitored and looked at to determine whether or not they're being supported effectively. Uh, the first is that there's a collaborative school support team, uh, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Uh, that there's a support teacher collaboration process. Now, in some places, they call these people resource teachers or support teachers or inclusion facilitators. Uh, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Number three, access to professional learning. That's an element that you see in a number of areas. Uh, Teachers face ongoing challenges, and I think ongoing professional learning is an essential part of any school's functioning in terms of improvement. And number four, a mentoring program. Number five, problem solving. And number six, evaluation and reflection. So again, we've set out here those elements with the indicator on the left, an elaboration of the factor in the center of the grid, and on the right, the things that one could look for to see whether or not it's in place. And I do want to just take time to look at both number one and two. The first one is collaborative school support team. The elaboration is that school leaders operate and hold regular meetings of a collaborative support team made up of school-based staff, including support teachers, counselors, specialists, others as appropriate. And they utilize the team to develop strategies to support teachers in meeting students' needs, solve problems, address systemic issues that are teacher or student specific. And I would emphasize that last part. Uh, the focus here is on supporting teachers with their challenges and developing, if it seems worthy, of systemic issues that affect not just perhaps one teacher, but several teachers. So that I think is a critical part of this. And the look for would be evidence of joint lesson planning, evidence of meetings, uh, minutes that these meetings are occurring, and all those kind of things that document that the school leader is seeing that this kind of collaboration occurs. And the second element, which I think is equally important, is support teacher collaboration. And support teachers should provide direct support and collaboration to classroom teachers through observation, co-planning of instruction, initiating and supporting instructional strategies, problem solving, modeling, co-teaching, coaching, and so on. And the look fors would be support teachers maintaining records of the dissertations and observations and processes that they use to support classroom teachers and the kind of work products that result from this kind of collaboration. Uh, Number three, access to professional learning. Number four, mentorship programs, some more detail there. Number five, problem solving. I think this is really important too. Uh, Spoken about it earlier with regard to leaders, that leaders don't sweep problems away. They recognize them and use them as opportunities for improvement and evaluation and reflection. Now, key concepts. This again, my discussion now is focused on my own personal perspective and experience in monitoring what really matters in school practice that results in effective inclusion. So the first thing is that number one, you need to recognize that to support inclusion, you have to support teachers. They're the ones that are going to be doing the work with the students in the classroom. That's fundamental. In support inclusion, support teachers. Number two, by supporting teachers, you support students. Some people are critical when they say, well, really, schools are about students, they're not about teachers. But teachers are the people that do the work to see that students learn. So effective schools support teachers. And number three, back to the point I made earlier, that everything you do to strengthen inclusion, you can see it as a way to strengthen the school, not only for the students that have now been included, but all students who are in the school. So, my fundamental question here is if I were evaluating the effectiveness of a school, is are you supporting teachers? That's the question. And I had experience in one of my work opportunities to survey 5,000 teachers and ask them what supports they need most. Uh, this was a full day workshop in their schools focused on inclusion. And during the last half hour of the day, after they'd gone through a whole number of things involved with making their school inclusive, they were asked to do an online survey of the supports they think are most needed to help them make inclusion work. And this is what those 5,000 teachers told us. On the left, this is a list of the things that they said were most valuable. From the left, which is the most valuable, to the right, which is less valuable. And what I want to concentrate your attention here is that the first five bars from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of the things that teachers say help them the most, all involve collaboration, planning, working, speaking together to make sure they're doing the best they can for students. Let's just review what those five things are. The first one, collaboration with education support teachers. That's what they were called, support teachers in this jurisdiction. So, number one, having an opportunity to speak with and collaborate with support teachers. Number two, collaboration with other classroom teachers, followed by time to collaborate with educational assistants. Next, planning time. No specific as to whether it's individual or group, but time to plan what the teacher is going to do. And number five, collaboration with parents. So the top five things that teachers said were most important or valuable to them for inclusive education were things involving collaboration with other people. Then you get to the other five, classroom resources, uh, having skill with differentiated instruction or universal design, skill for supporting diversity, skill for dealing with behavior, and skill with technology. So it's a very distinct kind of outcome here. And that's the result in one jurisdiction. Necessarily not the same everywhere, but I think it's very illustrative of the point that I want to make. And that is in supporting teachers, collaboration, working together, having teachers not feel they're dealing with their challenges individually and on their own is essential. And just to support this again, the concept of the school support team is that the team is made up of the people who are not classroom teachers. And various schools have various numbers of people with certain job titles. But typically in schools that I'm familiar with, you have principals and assistant principals, directors, whatever you call them, support teachers, resource teachers, again, whatever the label is, school counselors, educational assistants, school psychologists, whether they're based in the school full-time or part-time, other specialists who may be available to the school, and again, depending on circumstances, full-time or part-time. All of those people make up what I call the school support team. All of the people in the blue box go to their school each day with one purpose: to help and assist classroom teachers to be effective in teaching students. That's why they're there. That's why they have their positions. That's why they're employed, to assist classroom teachers to be successful in delivering direct service, off to the left, direct service to students. So that's one of the essential elements, I think, in determining and monitoring whether a school is effective or not. Is there a school support team? Is it clearly identified? Do they do their work consistently to support teachers? The next thing, and this pushes in on one aspect of the support team, and that is the support teacher. And I want to emphasize that the theory of inclusion, those of us who promoted inclusion have always said that we close special schools, we close special classes, we move students into regular classes or a common learning environment with their peers. And the people who used to operate in the special system can be brought in and provide support to the teachers who now have the students for direct instruction. And in many places, these people are called support teachers. And in my own experience, uh, that number of people, those individuals, it multiplied, wasn't simply bringing the number who were there, it was X plus Y, like a lot of people were added. And over time, the background and skills of the people doing the work has changed. But primarily, I think we need to think that the support teacher takes the place of the special education teacher. And the priority then is to support teachers, and by supporting teachers, support students. Support teachers through collaboration, identify instructional issues, and support student learning. Now, let me just spend a moment or two here uh, because I think this is important in terms of monitoring whether this kind of support is available in the school. This is all about monitoring and evaluation the effectiveness of the school in delivering inclusion and supporting teachers and students. And defining what the role of the support teacher is a critical uh, basic step that needs to take place. And after a period of transition, my definition of the key criteria is set out in these competencies. Number one, that support teachers be a competent and experienced teacher. It's my view that no one should be a support teacher who hasn't been a regular teacher for a few years at least and had some success accommodating students with diverse needs in the classroom. So, competent experience, have credibility with peers. And that's the box down in the center. Well regarded and credible with peers. Then the other one at the top is collaborative skills. Uh, Support teachers need to be able to collaborate effectively, know how to do that effectively, have knowledge of instructional strategies. Down in the second level, problem solving orientation. One of the fundamental characteristics of a support teacher is that they look at problems as opportunities to do something better, not as something discouraging, leading to a pessimistic, kind of negative kind of orientation. So a positive problem solving orientation. I've already talked about well regarded and credible with peers. Another important characteristic is works well with adults. Teachers work with students. A support teacher's primary work is collaborating with other adults, with teachers. And that's sort of a separate skill set. Not every good teacher can become a support teacher because maybe they don't work with a variety of other adults and their personalities effectively. Down at the bottom, knowledge of students with diverse needs. And finally, respectful of teachers, but appropriately assertive. And one of the things that I think has to be clear is that in an inclusive system, it's not a matter of choice whether or not to address the needs of a particular student. So there are circumstances where the support teacher doesn't just say to the classroom teacher, here's my idea, use it or don't, doesn't really matter, it's up to you. The support teacher has an obligation and an ethical responsibility to the student as well as the classroom teacher. Now, they have to be respectful of the classroom teacher's role, but I think the phrase appropriately assertive really is important because it asserts that one teacher simply can't decide, well, I'm not going to be bothered doing this particular thing that might help a student learn better. It's not, no one has the authority or right to do that individually. And support teachers need to appropriately assert the need to accommodate what the student needs to be successful. This graph illustrates an important base for the kind of model that I'm talking about and which I've had experience monitoring. And that is to say that the target, you can imagine this is a target, is that 60% of the time, support teachers will be working to strengthen instruction, which means they're supporting teachers. That's the blue. 60 minimum, a minimum of 60% of their time is targeted on supporting teachers to strengthen instruction. A maximum of 25% of their time working directly with students, because in many models, support teachers, resource teachers, spend almost all their time supporting students in small groups, maybe groups of 3 to 5 learners for an hour a day. That kind of model is a good thing to do. But if you have limited time and resources, it's not the most constructive thing to do. The most constructive thing is to make sure that support teachers are working with classroom teachers to strengthen instruction for all students, including those that have diverse needs. And finally, support teachers should spend no more than 15% of their time planning and doing organizational duties and all of the multiple things that a school can decide need to be done. And who better to do it than the support teacher? After all, they're not in the classroom. Now, one of the jurisdictions where I've worked, and you can see down in the right-hand corner a little polar bear, because this comes from the Northwest Territories of Canada, where I worked working with them on policy in this area a few years ago. And they constructed this very well articulated graph or outline of all of the things that a teacher does to support instruction or to support teachers. You see on the left, 60%, all of the things in those two columns, and 25% working with students, and then the other 15% doing all of the other things that come up. And I must be very specific here to tell you that schools have a tremendous ability to find things that someone who's not in a classroom teaching can do to help out in a specific situation. Whether it's attending to a particular student who has a health difficulty, or answering phones, or greeting a visitor at the door, there are just multiple ways in which the time of a support teacher can be taken up doing things that are off their core responsibility. So there needs to be a really targeted effort to keep on track. And that's the example of monitoring and evaluation I want to share with you now that I've used in a number of different places where I've done work. Some of this work has resulted in an article which you can find online. And it's called The Role of the Resource Teacher in Inclusive Setting. And it's in EdCan, which is Education Canada, one of their publications. And it's a time use survey, which is intended to provide information in order to monitor and to refocus how teachers spend their time. Now, this is a specific monitoring device that we developed, and let me explain it to you. It's a survey of the work and time allocation of support or resource teachers. And the instruction is that for 3 individual days over a 2-week period, each resource teacher is to complete this survey. And for each 15-minute time slot, they are to indicate the code that describes the activity they're involved with. And after recording for 3 days, they can enter the data on a survey site, and they're not to use a day that's not more or less typical. Like if it's a day they spent a half day at a workshop, that would not be a typical day. And they provided basic data on their school, and they didn't identify themselves individually, but they identified the grade level they work at. Now, we did an extensive consultation with support teachers, identifying the variety of things that they do, typically day by day by day in their work. And this chart sets out 20 of those things, and 23 of them, and 24 other. And of course, other can cover a lot of stuff. So teachers were familiarized with this grid. And then we asked them to behave like teachers typically don't do this. But I'm told that lawyers keep track of their time every like 5-minute clusters. So if they spend 5 minutes on your case and they charge you 500 euros an hour to do your work, then they charge you for the 5 minutes. So some professions are quite used to this kind of documentation of what they're doing. Teachers generally not. So it's a bit of an incursion into our basic practice. But I think for purposes of monitoring and evaluation, it's a useful one. So again, these 24 things were set up. The teachers are provided with this list. And they had told us through consultations and focus groups that these things constituted uh, most of it clearly constituted enough to represent the work that they typically do. And then we provided them with a grid. And starting from hour one of their work, 8 o'clock in the morning, for the first 15 minutes, they're asked to think about what was I primarily doing during that first 15-minute cluster. Now, they didn't have to necessarily do this segment by segment. They could do it at the end of an hour or whatever. Not, I could keep some notes so that they could do it later. But they were asked to complete this, and they were, again, I remind you, asked to do this for 3 typical days over a 2-week period. And then they entered it into a computerized system where the information could be quickly analyzed and the research staff could bring together the results and provide feedback. And this feedback could be provided to individual schools, to school clusters or districts, and to the jurisdiction as a whole. And you could compare how teachers were spending their time in one school with another, and so on. And all of this is focused on the fact that we want to coach and support people to do the things that we've identified as having the greatest impact on student learning. And students succeed when their teachers know what they're doing and are properly supported. And teachers are supported when they're able to get immediate, direct help from someone to collaborate, not to tell them exactly what to do necessarily. But remember, collaboration, joint planning was the thing teachers find most valuable. And it was to bring this result about. So that's my example of a very specific uh, way to monitor and evaluate how resource teachers spent their time. And again, the support teacher spends their time supporting classroom teachers for effective instruction. So I'll go back to the end again now. Okay, finally, the fourth thing that I want to point out and thing that I think is important is engaging with parents. And this is actually pretty direct, pretty straightforward. And these are the 6 things that I think are critical in any monitoring and evaluation of how effectively a school deals and participates, partners with parents in the process. The first is, does there exist a communication and trusting relationship between parents and the school? Does the school provide a welcoming environment to parents? Are there parent education and resources part of the plan? Are there information meetings? Are there brochures or pamphlets or online descriptions of information that help parents know what's relevant to their child? Is there real and effective collaboration in decision making? Do schools arbitrarily make decisions about students, or do they really involve parents? Do they seek collaboration to do that? Is there cultural competence demonstrated in the process? And where I live here in my part of Canada, we have a pretty we do not have a very diverse population, although it's increasingly diverse, uh, compared to urban settings in many of your countries. And the cultural competence, the way in which the school understands and accommodates the cultural norms of the students, the population of students they serve, is something that I think needs uh, to be monitored. And finally, does the school celebrate student success? Does it project the kind of recognition of effort and achievement that students achieve, which means so much to students and to their families? And again, those six things that I've just talked about, we have elaborated here in this page. In the middle of the page is the elaboration. And if you're looking for those elements within a school, some examples of look fors are to the right of the grid. Just for example, let's look at decision making, number 4. Uh, Involving parents in decision making processes regarding their child's education, including program planning meetings. This empowers families and ensures their voices are heard. Teachers and parents work together to create individualized learning objectives and instructional strategies. And on the look fors, they're documented collaborative meetings, clearly individual goals set, structured progress reports, documentations, uh, thoroughly providing evidence that parents are engaged and taking part in what affects the education of their child. From my own experience, again, uh, I've had a lot of experience working with parent advocacy groups. Uh, I've been a leader of the parent organization that represents families with children with intellectual disabilities in my own province and in Canada and actually in the Americas. And have a lot of experience working with families and parents. And typically, what I've found is families are looking for respect. They want to know that their aspirations for their child are taken seriously by the school. They're treated with respect. Their child is treated with respect. And school leaders expect everyone in the school, teachers, staff, students, to treat each other with respect. And special need, diversity, uh, disability should not lead to a lack of respect. Secondly, parents want information. They want to know what's happening. They want to know the structure of how the school does its business, and they want to know what's happening with their own child. So they need information. If you provide them with respect and information, then I think you have the conditions for a positive relationship. And they want to participate. They want to be part of the school community. And my example here of monitoring parent involvement is part of a larger system that's used in schools in this part of Canada and actually in many parts, many countries, actually. This company provides an online survey and reporting system that's widely used by thousands of schools in Canada and in other countries. Uh, the company's called the Learning Bar, and I'm not trying to sell their product, but it's an example of a product. And I know others exist, and I'm sure other people at the agency uh, could point out places and countries that have developed online survey kind of mechanisms that this is an illustration of. So this company is called the Learning Bar, and this is some of their promotional information about gathering information about the impact of the school and its program on students. And they focus on well-being and reducing vulnerability of youngsters and the process of sharing between families and schools that can create an equitable school environment where all students can thrive. And they say they capture student, parent, staff, and teacher voice to create a thriving school community. And they actually there are 4 aspects to their survey, of which students and parents are a key part, but it also includes feedback from teachers and staff. And the effect of this is that they gather this information periodically. It's coalesced into useful graphs and data that the school community, teachers, principals, leaders, teachers can engage with and identify the areas where they're doing well and where the feedback indicates that they could do better. And all of this is linked to school improvement. So all of this kind of feedback that we've been talking about from all 4 sectors, leadership and policy, inclusive instructional strategies, collaboration and supporting teachers, and engaging with parents, they all contribute to a monitoring and evaluation system that's goal is to improve instruction, improve inclusion, and improve how effectively the school serves students. So some final essential components I want to share with you from my experience. And a system, a monitoring and evaluation system needs to consider the need for more effective practices. So what would those practices be? However good a school is, it can improve. And what are the things that can be done to bring about that improvement? You need to gather feedback on student success. Now, that can take forms in different countries and different jurisdictions. It might involve national or regional tests of competence in literacy and mathematics, various other things, science. Those can all go into the process, and each country will have its own distinct way to present objective, data-based student success measures. Collaborate with teachers to find solutions to challenges. Monitoring doesn't do any good if it isn't followed up with an evaluation of what can be done to improvement, and connecting M&E or monitoring and evaluation processes to school improvement is essential. And finally, school leaders who make schools inclusive and sustain inclusive practices have to persist and persevere in order to make sure that that continues.